Long ago, in a quiet countryside surrounded by gentle hills and whispering trees, there was a small farming village where life moved slowly and simply. Among the farmers there was a kind, hard-working man named Arun. He owned a small piece of land, a few chickens, and an old donkey named Bala. Bala had been with Arun since he was young. Together they had carried heavy loads of grain, walked long distances to the market, and plowed the fields under the hot sun. But as the years passed, Bala grew old. His steps became slower, his back weaker, and his strength faded. Still, Arun cared for him. Even though Bala could no longer work much, the farmer often said, "He has served me well. Let him live his remaining days in peace." So every morning, Bala would wander near the fields, grazing lazily under the warm sunlight. He enjoyed watching the other animals and hearing the children laugh in the distance. Though his body was tired, his heart was peaceful. One warm afternoon, while wandering beyond the usual path, Bala came across an old, dried well hidden behind tall grass. The opening was narrow, and the stones were loose. As he stepped closer to sniff the wildflowers nearby, the ground suddenly gave way beneath his hooves. With a startled bray, Bala tumbled into the darkness below. When he hit the bottom, the pain shot through his legs. The air was cold and dusty, and the circle of light above seemed impossibly far away. He tried to climb, scraping his hooves against the damp walls, but the stones crumbled under his weight. Realizing he was trapped, Bala began to cry, loud, desperate cries that echoed across the empty fields. Hours passed. No one came. The sun began to sink behind the trees. At last, a villager walking home heard the faint sound of braying. Curious, he followed the noise until he reached the old well. When he looked inside, he saw Bala lying at the bottom, trembling and exhausted. "Oh no," the man gasped. "Arun's donkey has fallen in." He ran back to the village and quickly gathered the neighbors. Soon, Arun came running too, his face filled with worry. "My Bala," he shouted, peering into the well. "Hang on, old friend. We'll get you out." The villagers brought ropes, wooden planks, and buckets, trying every way they could imagine to rescue the poor animal. They lowered ropes, but Bala was too weak to tie himself. They thought of pulling him up with a harness, but the walls were too steep and narrow. After hours of struggle, everyone was exhausted and covered in dust. As the sun began to set, one of the neighbors sighed and said softly, "Arun, maybe it's time to let him go. He's old. It will be impossible to save him." Arun's heart ached. He sat by the well, staring down at his faithful companion. Bala looked up at him with tired eyes that seemed to say, "Please, don't give up on me." But deep down, Arun knew the truth. Even if they somehow pulled Bala out, he might not survive long. With a heavy heart, he made a painful decision. "My friend has suffered enough," he said quietly. "Maybe, it's time to lay him to rest." The villagers looked at him, uncertain, but they respected his choice. "Let's cover the well," Arun said, "so nothing else falls in." Reluctantly, they fetched shovels and began to toss dirt into the hole. When the first clump of soil hit Bala's back, the donkey flinched in confusion. Then came another, and another. Soon he understood, his master was giving up. They were burying him alive. A deep, aching sound escaped his throat, half a cry, half a groan. But after a moment, something inside him shifted. Fear turned into something else, something stronger. "If I stay still," he thought, "I'll be buried. But if I move, maybe I can survive." So with each shovel of dirt that fell upon him, Bala did something remarkable. He shook it off, 1, 2, 3, and stepped on top of it. Again, more dirt fell. Again, he shook it off and stepped higher. Bit by bit, the ground beneath him began to rise. At first, the villagers didn't notice. They kept shoveling in silence, thinking the donkey had stopped crying because he was giving up. But inside that dark well, Bala was fighting with every breath. He refused to surrender. Minutes turned to hours. Sweat dripped from the men's foreheads. The pile of soil grew taller. When Arun finally peered into the well again, what he saw left him speechless. There was Bala, no longer lying helpless at the bottom, but standing halfway up, his hooves pressing against the rising dirt. "Stop!" Arun shouted, dropping his shovel. "Look! He's climbing!" Everyone rushed to the edge. Sure enough, Bala kept shaking off each load of dirt and stepping higher, his eyes burning with determination. The villagers stood in awe as the donkey continued to rise, higher, higher, until at last, with one final push, Bala stepped onto the rim of the well and climbed out. The crowd fell silent. Even the birds seemed to pause. For a moment, Bala stood there breathing heavily, covered in dirt but alive, proud, and free. Then, without looking back, he turned toward the open fields and began to walk away, his head held high. Arun dropped to his knees, tears welling in his eyes. "You were stronger than I thought," he whispered. "Forgive me, old friend." Bala didn't stop. He walked until the sound of the village faded behind him. That night, under the wide sky, he rested on soft grass and looked at the stars. For the first time, he wasn't anyone's servant or burden, he was free. His body was still old, but his spirit was unbreakable. Days passed. The villagers talked about what had happened, amazed at how the donkey had saved himself. Children whispered, "He's the bravest animal in the world." To them, Bala became a symbol of hope, the creature who refused to give up, even when everyone else did. Meanwhile, Arun learned a lesson that stayed with him forever. He realized that sometimes, when life seems to bury us, it might actually be preparing us to rise higher. Every hardship can be a step if we choose to stand on it. Years later, when Arun himself became an old man, a group of children often gathered around him to hear stories. Among all the tales he told, one story stood out, the story of Bala, the donkey who turned his burial into his escape. And every time he finished, he would say the same words, "Life will throw dirt on you. People will doubt you. Sometimes, even those who love you might give up. But if you shake it off and keep stepping forward, no one can keep you down. The same weight that tries to bury you can lift you, if you don't give up." The lessons we can learn: 1. Use challenges as stepping stones. Every problem carries the seed of opportunity. The dirt meant to bury Bala became the path to his freedom. 2. Never give up on yourself. Others may lose faith, but your belief in yourself is your greatest power. 3. Turn pain into purpose. Hardship can strengthen your character, just as pressure shapes a diamond. 4. Your worth isn't defined by others. The farmer thought Bala was useless, but Bala proved that value comes from spirit, not age or appearance. 5. Keep moving forward. Even small steps, taken with courage, lead to great heights. And so, the story of the donkey who refused to give up lives on, a reminder that within every heart, no matter how tired or forgotten, there is the strength to rise again. Whenever life pushes you down, remember Bala. Shake off the dirt, step up, and keep climbing, until you find the light once more.